in this video, I'm going to do a walkthrough of Lab 22, which takes a look at our intestinal parasites. So we're going to look at some protozoans and then turn our attention to some parasitic worms and helminths and look at those. So this first image I have here is a protozoan parasite. This is Giardia lamblia, and this is the trophozoite stage, which is the feeding active stage of the parasite. So what you'll see here, it kind of looks like it has this face on it, and really what you're seeing here are the nuclei kind of outlined in this little sucking disc that they're going to use to attach to the intestinal wall. And you'll also see multiple wispy flagella here that basically allow them to swim through the intestines. So they'll anchor onto the intestinal wall. Giardiasis is the disease caused by infection with Giardia, and it can last for up to 2 weeks and can cause severe diarrhea, flatulence, abdominal cramping. And typically, this is contracted when someone in the United States where individuals are out hiking, they come across the stream, they drink from the stream, looks clean, smells clean, but it could be infected with the cyst form of Giardia, and then those cysts will essentially unencapsulate once they get into the intestines, and out comes this trophozoite or this feeding form. So Giardia lamblia here. Our next one we're going to take a look at is another protozoan. This is Entamoeba histolytica. You'll notice first off that there are no flagella. Okay, this is an amoeba, so they will not move with flagella. Instead, they'll move by what is or by forming what are called pseudopods. Basically, what they'll do is they'll extend out a piece of the cytoplasm and then use that to move throughout their environment. Now, one thing you'll notice here is looking at this trophozoite, you'll notice this really dark staining structure here. That would be the nucleus. So you can take a really good look at the nucleus here. You'll also notice some of these other circular structures within the trophozoite. These would be vacuoles that they'll use to hold, various substances within the cell. So this is Entamoeba histolytica. Okay, one more protozoan that we're going to take a look at before we move on to our parasitic worms. This is Balantidium coli. Notice it has a completely different structure from the others. It's almost round, circular. And then you'll notice this structure here in the middle, this kind of oblong structure. And this could be oriented in different directions within the cell. And that's going to give you a clue that this is Balantidium. So a lot less features than the other two that we saw that we've seen. So if we take another look, here's Giardia, again with those flagella that it's going to use to move through its environment. Entamoeba histolytica, which is an amoeba, and then Balantidium coli. So now we'll switch over and start taking a look at our parasitic worms. And our first one that we're going to look at here is Ascaris. Ascaris lumbricoides is a round worm. And what we're going to look at here is a cross section. And really, I want you to focus on these first two here. We're not going to look at the pharynx here. We're just going to look at the female versus the male. First of all, you'll notice the size difference. Females are a lot larger than the males. You'll see this outer structure here that is the cuticle. This is a very tough structure that protects them, but also they can get nutrients that kind of absorb in through the cuticle. You'll notice in the female, you see this large uterus that is full of eggs. Okay, and there's actually 2 of them here. And then you'll notice you see a lot of ovaries. They have multiple ovaries, okay? And then tiny little intestine in there, and then the muscle kind of going around the outside. So when you look at the female, you know, hundreds of eggs within the two uteri here, and then we see the intestine here. Then we see multiple testes. Okay, so not just the two that we find in humans. And then again, the muscles going out around on the outside here. And then in both of these, you'll notice what we call the pseudocoelom. So Ascaris, the roundworms, don't have a true body cavity. A coelom refers to a body cavity. And so that's why theirs is called a pseudo or false coelom, because it has the appearance of a complete body cavity that's going to enclose and encircle these internal organs, but it doesn't really seal them off. You know, you can see the muscles kind of creeping in here. And so it's a false coelom. As we continue to look at some of the higher order animals, we'll start to see these true coela, or these true body cavities. So again, this is the cross-section of Ascaris lumbricoides, the roundworm. And I didn't put one of these in here, but just to kind of show you, I can pull up what Ascaris would look like, what a roundworm looks like. When we get to the CDC here, and we'll show you. So this is what a roundworm looks like. They're not that large, but what happens is, as you saw, the females produce a lot of eggs, and so these eggs hatch, and what will happen is you'll get what's called a bolus of worms. So you just get this mass of tens or hundreds of worms, and that can lead to an intestinal blockage. So now we'll look at a couple of different hookworms. So I think I got these out of order. Here we go. This is the one I want to look at first. So right here, this is one example of a hookworm. This is our first one. This is Necator americanus that you'll see here. And you can kind of see why they call them hookworms. They're a lot smaller than a lot of our worms, and they just kind of have this little hook on the end of them. You'll notice the male has a little bit larger scolex, or the head region here, than the female. You'll see within the female this dark center here. So this would be the larva that would be developing here, the eggs and the larvae that are developing within the hookworm. So this is Necator americanus. And so this would be, oh, I got ahead of myself again. So this is Ancylostoma caninus. This is the dog hookworm. Again, you can see that hook structure, and then the little tail here coming almost to a point. So this would be Ancylostoma. This is actually, in your lab, it says the female, but what we're actually looking at here is a larval stage. This is what would be in the environment, and humans can be infected with hookworms by essentially stepping on them. They can burrow under the skin and cause a condition called cutaneous larval migrans, where the worms start to essentially migrate across the body, especially on the soles of the feet. And you can see the kind of the path or the track that the worm is taking there under the skin. So, you know, don't go barefoot outside. That's kind of the moral to the story on that one. And so then we'll see here, so this is a hookworm egg. So these would be shed in feces, okay? Now we're going to look at several different types of eggs, but what you'll see here with the hookworm egg is you've got almost this clear kind of almost capsule with this dark structure in the middle. So this would be an example of a hookworm egg, okay? Now we'll look at another type of worm here. This is Strongyloides. This is a female. And again, you'll notice this kind of hooked structure with this tail that almost comes to a point here. You've got eggs developing within the female here. So this is Strongyloides. Now we're switching gears here. We're looking at the pinworm. So this is Enterobius vermicularis. This is the pinworm. This is really one of the most common helminth diseases that we see in the United States, especially around children. The male and the female look pretty similar. They're pretty small. You see there, the female is going to be a little bit larger than the male. But they are smaller and shorter than the other types of worms that we look at. And if we look at a pinworm egg, you'll notice these look a lot different, and they still kind of have this clear structure around them, but kind of a double layered wall here to the pinworm eggs, okay? And a larger clearing before we get to the middle here. So this would be a pinworm egg. And again, if I go back to the hookworm egg, where was that? So again, notice there's no double wall here. Okay, so going back to the hookworm egg, there's no double wall and a smaller clearing than if we look at the pinworm egg. Okay, larger clearing, double wall here. So this is pinworm eggs. Now we'll look at the whipworm. This is Trichuris trachura. And we have here the male and the female. So these are called whipworms because they're very thin. Their head is a lot smaller than their tail. You can see here their head and then the tail. So what you're seeing here with the male, we see this really curved tail here, not seeing that with the female. So this is Trichuris, known as the whipworm. So now we come to our next two, Trichinella spiralis, and we see the female and the male here. Again, you'll see this curved area here. You've got the claspers on the tail. Okay, so this would be the tail. So this would be the head region kind of coming to a point. So here's the Trichinella spiralis. This entire structure here, you're seeing all of the different larval forms here within the uterus of the female. So again, the male over here, female over here. This is Trichinella spiralis. Now, Trichinella spiralis can get into the muscles. So we'll talk as we go through these about these different life cycles of the different worms, because they do have different life cycles, and we'll see that in our PowerPoint. But Trichinella spiralis is a type of nematode, and we'll see it in pigs primarily. Sometimes it's referred to as the pork worm because it's more commonly found in pork, and that's where humans tend to get it from, is eating pork. And but it can also be found in different rodents and in bears. So this is just another type of roundworm, so similar to the Ascaris that we looked at. So here it is in muscle. So here is, so this would be a slide of muscle, and here are the larval forms embedded within this muscle. Now, sometimes you can actually see a very tight spiral. These have not really developed enough that you can see that spiral within them, but this is what infected muscle would look like. And of course, if you eat pork that is infected with this, what we're eating when we eat pork are the muscles. So if you were to eat undercooked pork, then you could become infected with this particular worm. Okay. Now we're going to take a look at the tapeworm. So we have Taenia pisiformis, and on your lab it says composite, and the composite takes a look at several different structures of the tapeworm. So as you're drawing these, kind of leave a little bit of room to draw the different forms. So what I want to focus on first, and I'm going to bring up this photo here. So this is the head region here, the scolex area. So this would be the head. And as we come off the head, we're going to start to get segments, and these are called proglottids. So these little kind of square structures that you're seeing here, those are proglottids. So a tapeworm has these different segments, or these different sections. If we take a closer look at the scolex, what you're going to see, I mean, there's different ones here, but here's Taenia pisiformis in the middle. So you'll notice these 4 little circles here. Those are sucking discs. And then you notice this piece up here that has these hooks, and you can see them a little bit better in Taenia solium here. But these are essentially hooks. So what they'll do is they'll hook into the wall of the intestine, and then they'll use these sucking discs to kind of help them hold on. And as they grow out from the neck, essentially, into and form these proglottids. So let me make this a little bit bigger here. So here are proglottids, okay? And what you'll notice here in the proglottids is you see this kind of tiny little structure kind of running through the middle. That's going to be the uterus. And you'll notice an ovary on each side, okay? And then you'll notice these tiny little structures. Those are the testes, and then a sperm duct kind of leading up with a genital pore. So here's a genital pore. Here's a genital pore, here's a genital pore. So these are essentially hermaphrodites. They're going to have both male and female sex organs within the same individual. So they produce eggs and then fertilize those with sperm to have the fertilized eggs, and then they'll form the larval stage, and then so on from there. So so the tapeworm essentially is going to grow these proglottids from its neck down, okay? And so it's just going to get larger and larger and larger, okay? And what's going to happen is once the eggs, or once the proglottids become fully developed and fully formed, then they'll start to break off, okay? And they'll be shed in feces, okay? So the life cycle of the tapeworm is a little bit different than some of the others, because it's not that the eggs essentially are being laid. It's that they're shedding entire proglottids that are filled with these fertilized eggs. So this is what an egg looks like. So this is our next one here. This is Taenia pisiformis eggs. And you can see these look entirely different from the other ones that we've looked at. We don't have any type of clearing at all. And what you see is a very, very thick wall around the egg, kind of, and it's almost segmented here. So these look completely different from the hookworm and pinworm eggs that we've already seen. So this would be Taenia pisiformis. This would be a tapeworm. Excuse me, a tapeworm egg. Another type of tapeworm that we have here, Diphyllobothrum, this is associated with dogs primarily. So this would be an egg here. Again, notice there's no clearing, okay? More oval shape, a very thin outer covering here to the egg. And the last thing we're going to look at here is a fluke. These are classified with the tapeworms in the same classification scheme. But this is called a fluke, and this in particular is Fasciola hepatica, which is the liver fluke. And you'll notice the center of it here kind of looks like a proglottid of a tapeworm, but it has this kind of oval shape with kind of a pointed mouth region here, and then it kind of comes to a kind of a rounded point on the other end. And so these would infect the liver, and fortunately we don't see this very much in the United States because we have, you know, sanitary conditions, but this is what a liver fluke looks like. And then our last thing here, this would be the egg of Fasciola hepatica. And so you'll notice it is a little bit elongated. You'll notice a little bit of a clearing around part of it. And then the end of it kind of opens a little bit here. Okay. So that takes us through all of lab 22 with our different types of gastrointestinal parasites.